Douglas, the US president says this is all about getting an even better nuclear deal with Iran, but is that really his motivation?
Well, his motivation has always been about putting his own stamp, his own imprimatur, so to speak, on a deal. Donald Trump is about all policies boil down to Donald Trump. He wants it to be about him. And he also wants it to be not about Barack Obama, the un-Obama. We've spoken about this in relation to any number of policies in the past. Where the Iran nuclear deal is concerned, we heard the rhetoric for months and months preceding his May decision to actually pull the U.S. unilaterally out of this deal. He called it the worst deal ever negotiated. A bad deal. All of, as much as you could say bad about anything, he laid it on the Iran deal, and he made it very clear that Barack Obama's signature, what was considered perhaps his signature foreign policy achievement, its time had come, its days were numbered, and if he were president, it was going to be done with. So, in that sense, he's delivered on his promise. He now also has the sort of the ideological, if you want to say, clear to go ahead full speed as he wanted. Earlier on, before pulling out of the deal, there were elements within his own administration, including his then former Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, including then his former National Security Advisor, McMaster. These were people who didn't like the Iran deal, but at the time they were arguing in favor of it. They basically said it's the lesser of several very bad and evil options. So let's remain with it for now. We'll figure something out down the road. Then he tightened his ideological inner circle. It became much more radical, much more hawkish, much more ultra right-wing neoconservative in the sense they brought in John Bolton as the National Security Advisor. They brought in Mike Pompeo as the Secretary of State. And that really gave Trump the final sort of lock, if you will, the stranglehold on the type of foreign policy that he wanted to push all along. And look, you can't leave this out. The same way I get up here on any number of topics about Donald Trump and I say midterms. Yes, domestic politics. It really does come back to that, because if I were a betting man, I would say Donald Trump has probably never sat down and actually read the entire Iran deal as negotiated by Obama. What he does know, and what you could perhaps give him credit for, is having an uncanny instinct for what his base wants. Now, you might say his base isn't a majority in America, but he knows that delivering for his base so far has proved to be a winning formula for him. And we also know the base does not like the Iran deal. This plays very well with him, standing up to not just Iran, but to those wishy-washy, puny Europeans who want to keep doing business with Iran. So it's domestically, it plays well on a day where the midterms are coming up. And there are also some local primaries today in the U.S., which we have been talking about, but it's important.
But you mentioned there, Douglas, the Europeans, and as you started speaking, we were seeing EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini, who has been speaking out while visiting New Zealand, saying, she's calling on more business with Iran. The EU kind of really caught between the US and a hard place.
Look, the EU in an unenviable position because, yes, they are desperate to do something to try to salvage this deal. The EU remains very much committed to the deal. They believe that it's in the interest not just of the region, but of the entire world, international security, and pulling out was an absolutely catastrophic decision. They also know that Iran has made it very clear that Iran wants to remain in the deal. However, that is contingent for Iran, and its economic dollars and cents, really, on being able to retain the economic benefits it got from the original deal before the U.S. pulls out. So that means the EU has to give Iran deliverables in the economic sense. It has to give sort of legal and financial guarantees that Iran will continue to see economic benefits by remaining in this deal. Otherwise, why is it even in Iran's interest right now? Now, you can argue, and there are various opinions on this, as to how much the EU would have to deliver in order to make it worth Iran's while to stay in the deal. But what we do know is we already see a lot of multinational companies basically letting dollars and cents, give the verdict and basically saying we can't really afford under these circumstances. If we are torn between the wrath of Donald Trump and being locked out of the U.S. market or the potential benefits of being able to stay in the Iranian market but suffer U.S. sanctions, forget it. We have to make the choice, and we have to obey the U.S. sanctions and pull out. The EU has activated what's called a blocking statute, which is something that's supposed to prevent European companies from respecting those American sanctions. That is, to protect them if they continue doing business in Iran. Will it be enough? Will it be a little too little, too late? They need some sort of funding mechanism. There's been talk of a European investment bank giving funding to European companies. My hunch right now is it is going to be an uphill struggle. I won't rule it out that something could be salvaged here, but the Europeans are in an extremely tough position. Unfortunately, for the time being, Eve, financial might equals right if you're Donald Trump.
Okay, well, Douglas, on that